I'm joined here, obviously, with Pat Morris and Leah McDermott. And Pat would like to welcome everyone before he has to jump off. So, Pat, floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Leah and Vicky and Stephanie, for all your work leading us up to today. I am super excited that we're at this spot, and I think you will all get some great information today. To really, I was thinking about this, and Stephanie and I were talking about earlier that this is not just something that's going to be great for the sector. It's really going to be great for your organization and for your own personal growth. And it's like, I was thinking all the stuff that I've done in the chamber. It's not often that I kind of do stuff that has helped me do something I've never done before, and it really helps with my own personal growth as and as a nonprofit leader in the past. So I just want to thank you and ask you to go into this with that kind of an open mind, because you're going to be getting some skills that are going to help you right now and communicating the work that you're doing every single day to our elected leaders. And I think it's just the beginning of the chamber really taking advocacy to the next level. And again, want to thank Vicky and Leah, because I really think, separate from government affairs, Vicky, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first chamber committee that's taken this advocacy role as seriously as we do and as we have. And I'm excited at the next board meeting to be able to communicate to the board what we're doing here. So thank you all very much, and appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, Pat, for leading that charge, as I said before. And you're right. As you all know, I sit on I am the vice chair of the Marketing and Membership Growth Committee, but I'm also a member of the Government Affairs Committee, and I act as the liaison to this committee as well as the Workforce Housing Committee. And I can tell you that this is the first time there has been a formal and concerted effort to move an advocacy agenda of this magnitude. And I'm really proud that it's in the nonprofit sector, because it's usually the nonprofit sector that doesn't get all the attention. And so I love that you are leading this work on behalf of the chamber. And so with that, I wanted to introduce Leah McDermott, who you all know was with me. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get started. And I also want to welcome Sherry Thompson Giordano. Great to see you, Sherry. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, and I know I've got some great advocates on this. So some of this may be kind of redundant to some of you that are already doing such great advocacy work, but I always think that we can learn from each other. So let's take a good look at, we've already talked about who's here. I did want to remind you all that not only is Pat the chair of the Nonprofit Business Committee, he's now, his new position is the Director of Civic and Philanthropic Partnerships for Miami-Dade County, having been appointed by the mayor to that position. And of course, Leah is the program manager for the Florida Nonprofit Alliance, and I have my own consulting firm. I do nonprofit consulting as well as government and community relations and workplace well-being. So what are we going to accomplish today? We're going to look at, you're going to understand how to prepare for your meetings with elected officials on behalf of the chamber. We're going to talk a little bit about do's and don'ts when communicating with elected officials. And then we're going to talk about next steps, which will be very exciting, I hope. So I know you all are already on mute. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Leah will be monitoring when I'm talking, and she will make sure to help, as will Stephanie, to alert me if there's a question along the way. You can unmute yourself at any time to ask a question. I want this to be very interactive, so questions are going to be taken along the way. I value very much your own personal experience in the advocacy world, so I encourage all of you to speak. And as was the first training, this one is being recorded, and Stephanie will have it on our websites for future viewing, and you can share it with others as well. So relationships, let's talk a little bit about relationships, because it's really what it's all about. And I think most of you that are in this world know that it's our relationships that actually make us powerful. So with respect to your individually or the organization, whether it's yours or the chamber, we want you to make an effort to get to know who your representatives are, right? So we're gonna look at a list and talk a little bit about who they are, but it's really important that you do research on who your particular representative is, because you'll see the power of what you'll be doing is forming those relationships with people that, you live in their district or you know them. So you want to develop relationships not only with the elected officials, but with county and city staff. And that's both locally, statewide, and federally. And we'll talk more about why those relationships are so important. You want to be reasonable. I can't tell you the number of people that have crossed my path over the 30 years that I've been doing what I call lobbying or advocacy training. People have really kind of unreasonable expectations of the audience, right, of the elected official or the staff. So it's important that that how much influence one person can have versus a group of people, or someone can devote to a specific concern. I've always said I'm one of 100 people that a representative may talk to in a week. So you have to kind of understand your position within their world. I would say do not expect that just because you've had a conversation with staff or with people related to the member, the legislator or the elected official, that they know what's going on. So you always have to keep in mind that you are talking to people and you're kind of going to be like a tape recorder. You're going to say the same message over and over and over again. And of course, you got to keep your communication civil. There have been a number of times when I'm sure all of us have been very frustrated when speaking to a member or to a legislator. And I have to say, you just have to be very factual, very accurate. Your credibility is at stake every step of the way. And so you have to, earn the respect and appreciation of the person that you're speaking with. And you do that by being factual and accurate. So what's the difference between legislative and administrative, right? Because we're going to be talking with both of these groups of people. So the role of the county commission, and I want to sort of focus more into our local government for now, is very legislative versus the role of the mayor, right? Who's administrative, right? So the legislative, group is deciding, policy, and then the administration is actually implementing that policy. So you want to think through who your audience is, right? So when you're messaging, you are going to be messaging differently depending on who it is that you're speaking to, whether they're in the legislative side or in the administrative side. Keep in mind that a commissioner can absolutely help you set up meetings and can act as a liaison. There is this unspoken, I don't want to call it tension, but the administration understands the power of the commission, right? Just as does legislative staff understand, or administrative, or the governor's staff understands the power of the legislature. So they are more apt to want to act on and answer to, some of the concerns that a commissioner or a legislator may have. The mayor, of course, in our case, is able to very much set up meetings for us and sets some pretty necessary direction and leadership on any policy or programmatic issues that we might bring to her. So it's important to know, sort of like who's where and what can they do for us. So let's take a quick look at who we're talking about, right? So here are our federal elected officials. I've highlighted in green those two positions that were Carlos Jimenez and Maria Elvira Salazar actually won for the first time their congressional races in November. But we've got two senators, like every state does. And then we've got in our Miami-Dade delegation, 5 Congress people. So if you know any of these, we're gonna send the list around again. We encourage each one of you to fill out the spreadsheet and let us know who you have contacts with. And that means I'd like to know not only who you have contacts with in terms of the member, but if you have contacts with their staff, because I can't emphasize enough how important it is for us to know who has the relationships. And you'll see a little bit more about it when we talk at the end about next steps. So who are our state elected officials? Well, we've got 6 senators in the Miami-Dade delegation. Chevron, Ileana, and Ana Maria were all elected in November. And this is a group, Manny, Jason, and Annette have been there, and Annette has been there the longest. Manny came from the House and Jason was newly elected a couple years ago, but these are our senators. So if you have relationships with them, we want to know. Then look at our Florida House of Representatives. Of course, remember that in the Senate, there are 40 members. In the House, there are 120 of them. So you're going to have more representatives in the delegation than senators. Those identified in green again were newly elected in November. And we've got a very important person, Danny Perez here. Danny is our speaker designate. He will be speaker in 3 years. And so that's a very important position because he'll be leading the House of Representatives. And so we're very fortunate to have him. We just finished having a speaker in our delegation. And so it's always important to have leadership, any one of these people in leadership. Brian Avila is the speaker pro temp right now. So it's important for us to know who's who in our delegation and what positions that they hold. So let's take a look. Now let's zero in on our local officials, right? Welcome to the 13 members of the Miami-Dade delegation, right? This is our commission. As you know, Jose Pepe Diaz, who's down here in the corner representing District 12, is our chairman, and Oliver Gilbert representing District 1 is our vice chairman. And we have some new members because remember, this was the year that half of them, termed out. And so Keon Hardiman, Raquel Regalado, Danielle Cohen-Higgins, Keone McGee, and Renee Garcia joined the commission for the first time. In 2 years, they will circle back out. So and this will be the even numbers so that you know. So it was the odd numbers that termed out this year. The even numbers will term out in 2022. So effectively in 2022, you will have like a brand new commission that we haven't seen in years. And that presents challenges and opportunities because some of these people have been in office before. Keone McGee is a former minority leader in the House. Renee Garcia was in the House and then a former senator. And Oliver Gilbert was the mayor of Miami Gardens. Raquel Regalado, as you know, was a former school board member, and Keone Hardiman resigned his seat at the city of Miami to become a commissioner. So we say we recycle them from different jurisdictions, but this is our commission, and these are the people that we will be forming meetings with to talk to about what's happening with our Miami-Dade economic impact report. So the county commission also has committees. So it's very interesting because it's such a large commission. It has broken their work, if you will, down to 8 committees. And those committees, really, they're charged with the responsibility of supporting all the policies and goals and objectives for the county specific to their jurisdiction, right? They review items before they're placed on the board agenda, which is why it's so important that we get to know. And I'll tell you you'll see the 2 committees that I believe will be most interested in hearing about our report. And then they provide all of the intergovernmental efforts they provide support for the county's intergovernmental affairs staff in Tallahassee and in DC. So the committees that I think will want to hear about it, the Chairman Diaz has actually created a Chairman's Council of Policy with all of the chairs of each of those 8 committees, right? And they're going to meet as needed, and they're going to address issues of countywide importance, which is why I'm telling you, I think that we'll want to brief the chairman certainly so that maybe he would allow us to make a presentation before his Council of Policy. And that will cross all jurisdictions. And because our work is countywide, it makes sense that it would be, actually heard in this committee. There's also another committee that I think will be interested in our work, and that is the Public Housing and Community Services Committee chaired by Commissioner Monestein. And this oversees matters related to the Office Human Services, Office of Management and Budget, all the community-based organizations, public housing and community development. So a lot of our nonprofit business sector would fall within this committee, right? Their jurisdiction. So I'm looking forward to helping us get to the point where we're actually maybe getting on their agenda to make a presentation. There's also in the County Commission a opportunity for what's called citizens presentations. The chairman has the perspective on who he would invite to make a presentation. I am hopeful he will invite the Chamber's nonprofit business sector to make a brief presentation to the full commission on the economic impact of our work. So those are the kind of advocacy things you'll start seeing, as differing, because there's so many pockets of advocacy, and these are just some of the ways in which we'll get before the elected officials. So, of course, we've spoken about Mayor Daniela Levine Cava this morning. She's the first female to ever hold this position. And as we said, for those of you that weren't on the call when we opened the call, she is an Energizer Bunny with an extraordinary agenda. And the beautiful part is that she comes from the nonprofit world. She has great heart for the work, and she's very interested in the business side of our work. So we will certainly be briefing her. And this is her leadership team. And these are important people because we intersect with all of them as well. So Jimmy Morales, as you know, is a former county commissioner, former city manager of Miami Beach. He's her COO. Morris Copeland, who was over the juvenile detention center, or what they called the juvenile services, is now her chief community services officer. So he will be overseeing the work in the community. Ed Marquez, of course, is the CFO. Ed has been in that position for a while. And then JD Patterson is the head of our public safety. You know, a lot of our nonprofits do work in the public safety arena. So we may want to go in and brief some of these people as well. So last time when we met, we talked very briefly about the Miami-Dade County lobbyist ordinance. And I wanted to just brief you very quickly because we didn't have time to talk about it then. But here it is in a nutshell. So any person, paid or unpaid, employed or retained by a principal who seeks to encourage the passage, defeat, or modification of an ordinance, resolution, action, decision by the county commission, or an action, decision, recommendation of the county mayor or a county board or committee during the time period of the entire decision-making process on such an action is considered a lobbyist. Now, understand that. Includes seeking to influence any action, decision, or recommendation of county personnel, which foreseeably will be reviewed by the county commission or a county board or committee. Now, there's no way that any of us could foresee something being heard. That's why I tell everyone you must register as a lobbyist, because you don't want to get caught having had a conversation that a month or two or even a year later is foreseeably on the agenda, right? So they really do cover all the bases here. So who should register? Well, for a county register, you must register and pay your registration fee. That's the person or the firm compensated to lobby on behalf of a third party. Now that's someone like me who gets paid to lobby to represent a third party. But employees who lobby on behalf of his or her employer also must register. So you have to register, but you are exempt from paying the registration fee if the principal who lobbies on behalf of his or own organization is the lobbyist. So let's take Sherry's. Sherry works, she is the director of PACE, Center for Girls. All right, Sherry is the principal of her organization. Sherry must register if she's going in to talk on behalf of her organization, but she's exempt from paying the fee because she's the principal. I, on the other hand, if I am hired by PACE as their lobbyist, must register and pay the fee. So you see the difference? But if you're the principal, you know, just because you don't have a lobbyist doesn't mean anything. You are the lobbyist as under the lobbying ordinance of Miami-Dade County. So what's the definition of a principal? The president of a corporation, owner, president, or chief shareholder of the corporation, or an individual who has been designated or has the apparent authority to make the final decision on behalf of the corporate entity, or a member of the corporate board who's been appointed by the corporation to serve as its representative during negotiations. I tell you, most of my board members on the clients that I have register. Why? Because they go in with the client, they go in with the principal, and they are lobbying on behalf of the organization that they serve on the board. So you see how encompassing this can be. I have put here, because you will have a copy of this training. There is the online website for where you would go. You have to have registered within 5 days of being retained or before lobbying, and then yearly on January 15th for any ongoing matters that you have. The fee is $490, but the principals who lobby on behalf are exempt from paying it. The documents that you have to submit, there's a lobbyist registration form that you have to submit yearly. The principal who's authorizing the lobby has to also fill out a form. And there's an affidavit where the principal has to state that there will be no contingency or success fees paid. That's really important. In Miami-Dade, it is illegal to pay someone. So you would not be able to hire me and I get something done for you and you pay me a fee for that. That is critically important. And in addition to all of that, you must take an ethics course every 2 years, and you have to submit your training, your ethics training certificate that you've completed it within 60 days of registering as a lobbyist. So, are there any questions on that so
Yeah.
far? Because yes.
Okay, so, and this, I don't know, Vicky, how intelligent this question is, but oftentimes when you're filling out, so you're saying that if we are going to go in and talk to commissioners or any of the officials, that we should register as lobbyists. And then if we do that, there are times when you're working on nonprofits or working on grants that they'll ask you, are you a lobbyist? And oftentimes if you say yes, you're then disqualified for the grant.
Okay, so
You know what
it's
I mean,
a question.
right?
Yes, it's an excellent question. Because in the nonprofit sector, you're right, we're more apt to be writing grants and being the recipients of grant funds. In
Yeah.
this case, you are not a paid lobbyist. That's what they really mean.
Okay.
In this case, you are just, unfortunately, you are held to a much higher standard in Miami-Dade County than you would anywhere else, right? But you're not a paid lobbyist. You're executive director. That's your role. That you have to register as a lobbyist in order to speak to anyone in this county doesn't mean that you're a paid lobbyist at all. So I would answer that question as no, because you're not a lobbyist.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions?
Well, I was just going to reinforce that. I think you're right, Vicki, especially if there are grants that are not located in Miami-Dade County, because this is not the definition that anywhere else would use for lobbyists. This is very specific only to how Miami-Dade has decided to define it. So if it's a grant for somewhere else in the state, a federal, a grant at the national level, something like that, they're not going to have the same definition as what you see here.
Very good point, Leah. It's a good distinction because it really is just unique to us.
Mm-hmm.
So now let's move forward.
Sorry, can I just ask you one question on that? So I see how you talked about board member volunteers lobbying. What if you have other volunteers who are having conversations? How would they go through the registration?
Yeah, volunteers don't have to. It's just they're looking to find out who is in an official position of the organization, if you will. So yeah, no, volunteers can talk all day long that they want, but they're not really related to the business. They're just volunteers. Imagine we'd have to register everyone in Miami-Dade County.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a little bit onerous, but honestly, I always say err on the safe side because it can get really ugly if you don't. It can be really ugly. So meetings, let's move forward with meetings. So look, one-on-one meetings with elected officials and their staff is just the best way of beginning a mutually beneficial relationship. It allows you to build trust and empathy. And I think that, you'll find the more you do these one-on-one meetings, the more intimate and personal they become. And that's exactly what we're trying to do when we're building relationships. We're really trying to become friends. And because then we're building a sort of trusting relationship. So when we call them and we say we need something, or can they do something, or can we do something for them, we've already begun that relationship. We're not strangers anymore. But remember that it's not always possible to get a direct meeting with an elected official. And that's a lot of times, let me say. It won't be for you if you are lobbying under the umbrella of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce because of who we are, right? But I just say this, that if you're lobbying on your own behalf, know that sometimes you can't meet with the member, and that's okay. Because the person that you're going to meet with in lieu of the member is the staffer. And I am telling you, they have 24/7 access to that member. And if you become their best friend, you can be sure the member will know you when you do meet with him. So it's really important that you recognize that it's not just the member that's important, it's their staff as well. So tips on scheduling one-on-one meetings. Listen, they get about 1,000 requests for meetings. What makes you different, right? I always say a 2-minute summary on what it is that you're trying to meet with them on, right? But get them a hook. And I always know my audience. So if this is, let's say it's not, we're going to be talking about nonprofit stuff. If there's anyone that you know that's a member, that has a family member that works for nonprofits, or you have seen that attends a lot of meetings, I always say, I know how important the nonprofit sector is to Senator, X, right? Now, whether it is or it isn't, you're going to get a meeting because somehow the staffer, the scheduler thinks, oh, this must be important. So there are ways in which we manipulate the request to try to get before the member, right? We have to limit our time. Look I know I say 5 to 15 minutes here. I've had to make my case in 2. I've had to make it walking and talking. I've had to make it in an elevator ride, which is a 30 seconds. You have to know it has to be quick and dirty when it's short time. But when you're given 15 minutes, respect it. I always say if they give you 15, use 10. They will remember that because they've got a slew of appointments behind you, and they're probably running late when you arrived, unless you're the first meeting of the day. And even sometimes they're late to the office. So at a state level, we've said appointments are often 5 minutes or less. So make your point. And if you can't get an appointment, try catching the member. Listen, I'm everywhere and nowhere, right? I'm at committee meetings. I call them off the dais. I will walk with them. I will catch them when they're walking to their car. I will catch them after hours. There are many ways to catch somebody, but to be respectful of their space and their time, right? But you need to make yourself known because the squeaky wheel does get the grease. So work with someone who has an existing relationship. Look at the chamber's full of people that have relationships. You yourselves have relationships. If you don't have a relationship with somebody, get to know someone who does, because they can make an introduction for you. And we do this all the time. It's not an unusual thing for someone to introduce someone. I would suggest you make the meeting in the district. And by that, I mean, listen, all the county commissioners, like for instance, the commissioner of District 9 is only downtown because his district is way south. He's only downtown for commission on the days of county commission meetings. He is always in his district office, and that's where you want to meet them because that's when they're more relaxed. That's when they have more time to meet with you, right? You want to schedule yourself far in advance because remember, that's a little bit dicey when you're talking about legislators. If you try to get on their calendar 2 weeks in advance, the staff is probably going to tell you, we don't know yet, but I'll put you down and I'll call you. And of course, you're going to keep following up. With county commissioners, it's kind of easy. They're a lot more, I think they're more accessible when they're not in county commission meetings, right? But try to schedule yourself far in advance. Follow up those meeting requests. I always follow up with just confirming that I'm meeting with the senator, on Tuesday, tomorrow at 9, because things change. And that's what you need to understand. You've got to be able to work. Don't get frustrated. If they call you and say, can we change the appointment? You better believe you can. That's what you say. Of course I can. And you change your schedule to meet with them. And of course, we've already discussed the aides, the schedulers, the legislative aides, they're the gatekeepers. And they should be your best friends. So communications, how do we communicate with people, that we're trying to impact? So you're going to take a quick look at, in a moment, the handout. We're working on a handout. And of course, they should be organized, factual, very easy to follow, and lots of pictures. And let me just say this, if you've been in the business as long as I've been in the business, if it's one page and it's bullets and it's not lengthy paragraphs, they just don't have time for this. And you have to recognize that in their office, when I walk in, if I'm a 4 o'clock appointment, I see all the handouts from everybody before me. Mine has to be the one that they absolutely hang on to, right? So you want to make sure it's something that they want to look at. Emails. I know people say send emails. Let me tell you how many members have told me, my God, if my box is full. Yes, emails are important, but more importantly, if you identify yourself as a member of a group, right? It's much better than the group saying we represent 10,000 people. Well, guess what? If the 10,000 people reach out to them and say, I'm a member of that group, it's much more impactful. Form emails, I don't think that they carry much weight. I think that a personal message is far more impressive. And remember who's reading them. The member's not reading your emails. P.S. The aides are reading your emails. So it's always important to put I always put in a sentence about how wonderful their aid is, how helpful they have been. These are like little tips because the aid's reading it and they're like, okay, she's going to see them. She's going to see them. And then make sure you have your address. And if you're a member of the district, which I think, is really super important, if you're their constituent, ensure that they know that up front. I am your constituent. I live at, and I'm so excited to be able to come and meet with you about, and then that's it, right? Doesn't have lengthy emails don't work. They won't get past the first paragraph. There's thousands of emails coming into the inbox. So you remember last time, Pat said that he was commissioning FIU, the Metropolitan Center, to help us do an infographic. So I have extracted some of those graphics so you can see what we would have on a one-pager that we would give them. So nice colors, nice, sort of looking at what, so obviously this is the report, the economic impact of the nonprofit sector in Miami-Dade County. Important that they see the title right off the bat. Then there is some data information about the nonprofit sector. Then there is what are Miami-Dade, how many organizations we are in that particular sector, with some information on the different types of nonprofits that are in. Then there is the economic impact broken down as to employees, wages, volunteers, expenses, and then the total impact. And then there is the future of the sector, which I think is critically important because the data is really important, but the ask is even more important, right? That supports the data that you've presented and telling them what your challenges are, what the opportunities are, and then ending your spiel with what are you asking them to do? I can't tell you how many of the members have said to me, I can't tell you how many meetings I had today and I have no idea what they wanted me to do. None. But I always end with an ask, and then I always end, and you'll see the do's and don'ts, with what can I do for you? Because there's always something you can do for them. So are there any questions thus far on communications, on the meetings? Okay, seeing none, then we're going to go to public input. And I think all of you are probably really good at this. It's important that you know that you have the ability to go, if there is a nonprofit, and I'm hopeful that we'll get before the commission, you'll have an opportunity to speak, right? Because there's always public input. There's a section in their meetings that's devoted to public input. And it's limited to three minutes per person, right? And so basically, you don't want everybody getting up there and saying the same thing. That drives them nuts. You want to coordinate your public input with the group to say, okay, you focus on this, then you focus on that. So it's something new that they're hearing, right? Because if they think that you're going to say the same thing, they will just ask you all to stand up and wave in support of whoever spoke, the first 2 or 3 times. And you want to be able to have an opportunity, because chances are each of you in the organization is in fact knows somebody on the dais, right? So it's good to know when you say, okay, let's have 10 people speak at this county commission meeting. All right, let's have the 10 people, each one of them knows somebody on that dais, because now you get their attention, right? Use a hook. Please don't get emotional. They don't like that. You're trying to close with a reasonable solution, always with an ask. Why are you even up there, right? Why are they listening to you? And then be civil. You might hear things you don't like. There might have been a person who spoke before you that said something you didn't like. It's okay. You're just stay in your lane and stay focused on your message. Do's and don'ts, super important. So clearly identify the subject of interest. And if there is a House bill, Senate bill, or an ordinance number or a resolution, cite it so that the elected official knows, they kind of zero in on what you're doing. Make your points really concise. I mean, I have sat in meetings that have been painful, listening to people when it could have been what they took 10 minutes to say, they could have said in a minute. So be very concise, be clear, explain your connection to the issue and its impact on you and others. And of course, in our case, you are a member of the nonprofit business sector. You are a member of the chamber. This is obviously impacting you in a way. And so you can speak about the impact it's having on the sector because you're part of it. So you're going to be much more credible telling the story. Determine the member's stance on the issue before you go. Know whether, listen, I know some people that are not really excited about nonprofits. They think we got too many of them. They have these crazy ideas that somehow, we're not, there's always a question about where the money is going. So be sure that you know who your audience is and what your stance is, because if that's a member, you want to make sure that you explain to them that it, in fact, you already are addressing some of the concerns that you would have to address in the meeting. Be proactive is what I'm saying. Use your personal experiences. If you in your own organization have felt the economic impact and the challenges, be clear that you can say that, right? And give examples. And of course, I said, keep your time constrained. I mean, it's really important that you don't go on and on and on, and that the knock on the door has to happen so that he has to stop the meeting on you. Provide a brief synopsis of the issues, and that's the one pager that we've talked about, the leave behind. I don't need to tell you this because you all are so passionate about what you do anyway, but they are more apt to listen if the story is from the heart. You should expect questions, and you need to be responsive to them. And if you don't have the answer, you need to tell them that you don't have the answer, but that you will get back to them with the answer. It's always best not to BS a member, because someone will know, and that will ruin your credibility. Discuss, don't argue. For God's sakes, do not get in an argument with a member. Tell them, I hear what you're saying. I understand your position. But I'd like to point this out, right? I mean, we're not here to argue with them. We're here to get them to get on our side. I never leave the office without knowing, and this is just being a paid lobbyist, about knowing if you're on my side or not, right? Because I have to count votes. So I suggest that you always end the meeting with, can I count on your support? Can I count on when this comes to you, can I count on your support? And then always follow up with a thank you note, particularly to the staff that got you in, especially if there was no way to get in and they made an exception for you. Don't, for goodness sakes, be rude or threatening. And I have seen it, believe it or not. I have absolutely seen threats being thrown around. That doesn't win friends. You cannot promise something you cannot deliver. You cannot take your frustrations out on the member or the staff. If you've had a bad day, you should cancel the meeting. If you don't think that your best self can show up for that meeting, don't be yelling at the staff. Don't be frustrated. Don't be self-righteous or overbearing. I have seen people try to get a meeting and yelling at the staff. Don't be vague about the issue. Their time is limited and it is precious. So do your research, ensure that you have the facts beforehand, and if the member doesn't agree with you, then just say, I understand your position. And don't forget to thank the member for their past assistance and support. Listen, some of these members have been really good to the nonprofit business sector, and we need to remind them that we are appreciative of that. So it's always good to know how to say thank you, but not only thank you now, thank you for what you've already done, and thank you for what you're going to do, kind of an affirmative. So what do they need when I tell you that, oh my gosh, I want to be able to help them? So they need timely and correct information on any pending legislation or proposed legislation. They need accurate information for sure, because guess what? They're going to use it. And if you haven't given them accurate information and they've used it either in a talk in the district or even, when they make their comments on their bills or ordinances, you will be in big trouble. Strong and concise communications, lots of patience. Things do not get done the way we think they get done in government. It's a slow moving bureaucracy. There are a lot of levels of leadership. The patient person is the person that the member is going to be very appreciative about. You are a great resource. You are the reason that they can speak to individual circumstances in the district on the ground. So make sure that you share your experiences and any resources that you have. And you understand the issues better than anybody. You're on the ground with the constituents, because not only are you a constituent, you serve their constituents. So it's important that they hear that, right? Engagement. So this is really important. You need to invite them to any of your major events or fundraisers, right? They may or may not come, but inviting them and inviting the staff. I know it's really important to have the member there, but the staff who never really gets to get out of the office sometimes, invite them and do outreach. Elected officials love to do outreach. And so your events are a way that they get to engage in the community. Never go dark with elected officials. I always say you've just got to be in front of them at all times. So keep them in the loop, send them things. I thought you might be interested in this given our conversation during our last meeting on June 12th, right? Attend their town hall meetings and all their events. Make yourself visible there and schedule follow-up meetings after the session is over. Schedule the meetings. They will come home to the district and they will be thrilled to be home. They're going to take some time off after the big, like in the county, they take time off after the budget meetings because it's harrowing. It's a harrowing experience. They're up for weeks and weeks. And in the legislative session, after it's over, they'll take a vacation, then they'll come back to the district, and that's the best time to follow up with them on any meeting. You're going to be representing the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce. So what does that mean, right? So remember that you're under our umbrella at the chamber and you're advocating on behalf of the chamber, right? And you will be talking about this report and the impact, the economic impact on the nonprofit business sector. You will also be, when you set up your meetings, identify yourself as a member of this committee, right? And I would like you to remember to send all your meeting schedules, not only to Stephanie and Pat, but also to Spencer Pyland, who is our Vice President of Government Affairs at the Chamber. He oversees all of our government affairs work, and he is the staff supporting the Government Affairs Committee. So he will keep them abreast as well. In your meeting, you may introduce yourself as who you are, your own organization, right? So Sherry would say, I am the executive director of the Pace Center for Girls, but more importantly, I'm here today because I'm a member of the Greater Miami Chamber of Commerce Nonprofit Business Committee, right? Because they probably do know you in your world, right? But make sure that you emphasize that you are there, representing the chamber. Please don't use your meetings to advocate for your organization. There's nothing more confusing for a member when you say that you're there to talk about the chamber and then you try to talk about your organization and its needs. And prepare a brief summary report and any follow-up action that the member has asked for your committee, and also send a copy to Spencer so he'll be alerted as to how your meetings are going, right? And then next steps. We're going to finalize the handouts for you. We need to create an outreach plan and share it with all the committee members and interested stakeholders, meaning anybody who has an interest in the nonprofit world. We have to identify and develop relationships with coalition partners. So you're the best people to do that, since you are already coordinating efforts on the ground with other community-based organizations. We are in the process of completing the database of who the committee has personal and professional relationships vis-a-vis the elected officials we talked about earlier. You'll be scheduling meetings. You'll be determining which committee members will attend which meetings. You cannot arrive with 20 people in an office. So, we always say between 3 to 5 members, three to five committee members is a good kind of number to go into a meeting with a member. And then you're going to coordinate your advocacy efforts with Spencer, right? Because he's the one who is coordinating all of our efforts across the Chamber's board. So it's important that these are going to be our next steps. What we'll probably do is begin all this work in the next month. I know that it's Pat's goal that you will start meeting with members sometime in April. So kind of the end of April, beginning of May, before the summer starts. And so this is a good plan, if you will. And now I guess we're just up to questions. We've got a few minutes. So are there any questions at all? I'll stop sharing my screen so I can see you all. Are there any questions of anyone, of any of the, and Spencer is here. Spencer, good morning. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Very well. For all of you who don't know, this is the Spencer Pilot that I referenced in my presentation. He's the Vice President of Government Affairs, my right-hand man. Couldn't do it without him, and he's been very helpful in advancing the chambers overall, all of our legislative agenda. But he's here joining us today because he's very interested in what it is that we're doing and how we're moving this effort forward. So I'm excited. Thank you, Spencer. I don't know if you have a few things you might want to share with the committee.
No, I mean, I think you covered it pretty well. Just consider me, an asset in any way that, I can be, for your efforts with the chamber.
Great, thank you so much. So Debbie just asked, what is the best way to send regular updates to county commissioners? Does District X at Miami-Dade Gov get to them? Debbie, yes, it would, but I would suggest better that you get to know who their staff are, and if there's a legislative, remember they have a scheduler, they have a legislative person, and then sometimes they have more than one. So I usually update the legislative person, right? So, and I have their emails. So I would just suggest that you call the office and ask who is in charge of their legislative, or policy, and get their emails and then update them that way. You're welcome. Any other questions? So how many of you are presently engaged, besides Sherry and Danielle that I know so well, and Debbie? How many of you, by a show of hands, are presently engaged in advocacy work at some level? Okay, great. All right, so Katie from Neighbors for Neighbors, are you doing any advocacy work, any education work?
Not formally, no.
Okay.
That's what we're here to learn about, especially because we work with so many other nonprofits in the community. And while we don't provide any direct services, we know that it affects the entire nonprofit community as a whole. So we want to be a part of that. And because we have media connections through our partners at Channel 4 and the Herald and such, we know that we have a voice to share the message that could come out of this. So that's, I think, our real goal is to be, kind of an advocate of the advocates, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I'm again, thank you so much for joining us, because you have a sort of tie to many nonprofits, you'll probably be very instrumental as we create that coalition of partners. And also, getting the word out, right? I mean, there's nothing better for I consider the chamber than to have good media about the work that we're doing in this very interesting and unique, container called advocacy. So we will certainly appreciate all of your input and efforts on our behalf.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Erica, you have your hand up. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So Erica, are you doing any advocacy work currently?
Yeah. My husband and I work with running an organization that rescues children from human trafficking. So we're always involved in doing different things. And we're a year and a half into living in Miami for the first time. And so we're working on figuring out how we can get involved in the local community here too.
Oh, great. You'll be wonderful in this. And I know you may have connected already with Tanya, who is a big advocate. Yes, advocate.
Yep.
So that's wonderful. Well,
Yep.
Great. Well, welcome. And we will welcome your expertise as well in the area that you are in. Manny, how about you? Manny, how about you? Are you doing?
I haven't done any advocacy work in the past. I'm here primarily to help support the nonprofit folks. So this is more of a learning experience for me than anything else.
Well, thank you for joining us. I hope you did learn something. I know it's a lot of information all at once, but I'm so happy to see someone who's supporting the sector. So thank you for joining us. Barry, how about you?
So I'm relatively new in my current role here at Easter Seals, so have not been involved in any advocacy recently, but did do some, I guess, direct lobbying at the state legislature years ago with a former employer. So. Oh,
good. So you know that area, the arena, I call it, because it is indeed that. Oh my goodness, and getting worse by the day, Barry.
Yeah.
Yes, we all know. Thank you so much for joining us. We're happy that you'll be able to at least lend some of that expertise as well. It's certainly not lost. It's like riding a bicycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Eddie, how about you?
Well, because of the nature of the fair and the fairgrounds and the last year emergency responses, I've over the years built a very good relationship with the county commissioners, the state representatives and senators you were mentioning, simply because they use our facility. So it actually evolved over when I was a board member and now president. It evolved over time, mostly everybody needing to use the fairgrounds. In the last year, it has gone the other way. Now we need the help. So, but I agree with you wholeheartedly. I've tried to maintain a very friendly relationship with all the elected officials. And 9 times out of 10, when I talk to them, it has nothing to do with business.
Right.
It's just how things going, what's going on, what are you working on, where can we help, how's the family type of stuff. And that's the relationship I have with them is built on that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it really is all about that. Sometimes I don't even get to my issue because the friendship is so ingrained that, they're like, yes, I'll just do it. But and now
You
let's
usually have to follow up. You usually have to follow up with a text. Oh, by the way, I forgot to ask.
I swear.
Yeah. But it's that personal friendship that and the respect.
Yeah.
That friendship only goes so far. I don't take advantage of the friendship.
No, God, no. Yeah.
And I never will. But there's that respect that when I'm coming to them, since we never ask for anything, it's something that's of need. I'm not just, hey, I need another favor. I need another handout. No, we never ask. So when we do, it's for a purpose.
That is such a good point.
That.
That's such a good point. Do not abuse the relationships. And listen, I have all of their cell numbers. I will not give it to anyone. I will ask them if I can give it. And if not, I ask them, can your staff call them? Because, those are such coveted, it's an asset. I call my phone an asset.
I'll call their staff and say, hey, can you call so-and-so from your office?
Right.
This is what I was asked. I'm not giving out information. Can you call, this person from your office? They need your help, but I'm not giving out your information.
Correct. Good point. Kira O'Rourke, I can't see you, but curious if you're doing any advocacy work.
Good morning, everyone. I'm with the OLCDC. I've been hired as their advocacy and policy manager. And so we're starting the sort of advocacy branch of the organization. So this is something that we're starting. We're excited to be a part of it. I'm originally from Miami, but came back after law school. So we're trying to figure out essentially, we do a lot of direct services and real estate development. So this is something that's totally new and trying to kind of basically combine sort of our affordable housing goals and our direct services goals in an advocacy platform. So.
Yeah, excellent. And I know that your fearless leader, Dr. Logan, is a former, member of the House of Representatives and just an extraordinary leader in politics and has great relationships. So you're in good hands, Kira. Very good hands.
Yeah, we feel very lucky.
Yeah. And so the other, so Debbie, you're on here. What does your advocacy look like?
I'm the executive director of the Key Clubhouse of South Florida, and we help people with mental illnesses get jobs and go back to school. And very soon we're moving into a new clubhouse, a 5,000 square foot clubhouse with 40 units that are going to be provided to our members.
Great.
So in terms of our advocacy, so I have done meetings with county commissioners in the past. And I've been up to Tallahassee as the Key Clubhouse is part of a Florida Clubhouse Coalition. So I've been up and talked to senators and representatives of different parts of the state to advocate for funding for mental health clubhouses. So I've done that. I'm not a lobbyist. I never filled out any kind of application, but I do think you've done a great presentation. And I love the fact that you said just one fact sheet with just bullet points, lots of photos, because people tend to go on and on with it's always a challenge to keep the writing small and the message concise and clear and short. So that's what I've done.
Well, I'm very happy that you're here as well, because all the collective experience of all of you is really going to be helpful when you create your plan, right? Right. And I think it's been Pat's desire that we really work with the members here of this committee. In many ways, there was a discussion about, do you need any help from the Government Affairs Committee? And honestly, they're there to help you, but I don't think you need it. I mean, I'm looking at, for instance, Sherry, you can just briefly say what kind of advocacy work you've done, although I know it, the rest of the group might benefit from it.
Okay, I'm happy to. So we look at it on two levels. One is statewide and one is local. And first of all, let me just say I thought this was an excellent presentation, and you gave such helpful hints, even to the point that first time you go in to see the legislator in Tallahassee and you're all ready to speak. And now he says, okay, I have 3, go. And you're like, oh my God, what? So thank you for doing that, because that is the norm, not the exception. But so we once a year go to Tallahassee with over 100 PACE girls from every one of our 22 centers. And literally we have 10 meetings scheduled in a day. And we run from literally with the girls, 4 girls for each center. And we run office to office to advocate for PACE. And normally the girls are the speakers, because they're the ones that really have the story. We, when session is not in play, and one thing I want to do is I want to be more involved on the commissioner level, because I haven't done that so much, but I have a list on my billboard or bulletin board right now with all of my legislators' birthdays. And so we send them a little video with one of the girls thanking them and wishing them a happy birthday. And they respond back to that. They really, really like that. So it's just that combination of keeping people informed and keeping in touch with people and seeing them in their office here is, as you said, is just so much more fun. And I think it gets you a lot more. But I think that I'm excited about what we're doing for the chamber and for the overall nonprofit sector in Miami-Dade. I think it's important that we go in and see all of these people that you've listed and talk to them about the survey and the outcome and how important this sector is to the county and to the people in the county. So I'm very excited about this.
Thank you, Sherry. You're going to be a great team member. You've got worlds of experience. Yes, Leah.
If I can just interject really quickly, because I think, Sherry said some things, Eddie said some things that reminded me that even if you don't have a lot of advocacy and lobbying experience, you probably have fundraising experience, because we all do that in our world. And there are a lot of characteristics for good fundraising that transition really nicely into good advocacy and lobbying. So don't get intimidated. Just think about what you would do to build relationships with donors, to make sure that you are keeping in touch with them, that you're being respectful. All of those things apply directly to the advocacy and lobbying world too. So you have experience, we just going to transition it to a little bit of a different platform going forward.
That is such good. That's such a wonderful point. They are transferable skills, and I'm glad you pointed that out. Danielle, tell me. I know you're everywhere. So tell me about your advocacy efforts. You're on mute.
I first of all, Vicki, I love the way you teach. I love it, and I love how clear and detailed and thorough you go. And also how you point out, because nonprofit, we have to serve people. People come first than anything. And so I've seen so many times what you're saying was true about how some people just go I want to speak to the state representative, and they'll talk they'll just be pretentious, whatever, to the aide, when in fact it's totally the opposite. For me, one of the things that has worked the most is actually being friends with the aide and actually following them on social media. Usually they're millennials, young millennials. You follow them on Instagram, and sometimes they actually want to run in the future. So you want to empower them and encourage them, oh, you have your voice, you go girl. I think that's powerful. And then the relationship is built. They see what you're doing, your movement. And I think also one of the best things is that they have to get elected either way. I mean, the candidates, the elected officials, usually they want to get elected again. One of the things that you were saying, how can I help you? I use that a lot of we have this initiative and we were thinking that you would be a great, person to come, now for campaigning because of COVID, they couldn't be out there as much, but we will have food distributions.
in their district who like, hey, you know, we have everything. Would you want to come? And they were like, oh my God, of course they want to show face. And they're like, yeah, of course. And then we would get like some like value in kind in a way, because they would bring in masks. We didn't have masks, so they would bring in the masks, or they would bring in whatever contacts to like sanitizers, for example. So I think that created a great partnership. They got to see how our organization Be Strong worked. So I think there's always ways where instead of looking for the like being the beggars, we actually create a platform for them, if you think about it, and we can help them kind of be seen, and also study their committees. Some are really into education committee, some are really into transportation or economic or business. So looking for that meta program of what drives them, I think that's key too. I just love being with you, Vicky. I learned so much from you.
My God, Daniela, I love you as well. And I'm so grateful you brought up two very important points. Social media, they are all on social media. And I failed to let you know that is one of the ways in which we are constantly in touch with them, right? And their staff. And so wonderful point, Danielle, on that. And of course, you know, providing that platform for them where they come. You are famous for providing opportunities for them to show their face, but with them comes so much. Sometimes it comes with media that gives your organization more of a, you know, kind of a presence in the community. So those are really good points. Thank you so much. So I don't have any other, I think I've gone around the room to everyone. I just want to thank, first of all, Pat, for, you know, making this a reality. It was his idea, and we are so grateful that he has taken such a leadership role. I want to thank Leah, who has been an incredible resource. We're so grateful that she's a part of it, and will continue to lend her expertise as we move forward. I want to thank Stephanie for all the support that she's given us, and Spencer, of course, who has really been helpful in sort of propelling our work and being the support and resources that we need within the chamber and even outside of the chamber. And then of course to the staff that's here, Ransha, Siri, we're so grateful for all of you. And then lastly, for all of you that came and attended, thank you so very much for your time. I'm excited about next steps, and I know Stephanie will be getting in contact with you as we move forward. So Stephanie, I don't know if you have any closing remarks to make.
Yes, so on that note, I also want to thank you, Vicky, Leah, Pat, and Spencer for organizing these advocacy sessions and sharing your knowledge with us, giving us helpful tips when approaching our elected officials and their staff. I thought that was very important. So we're very excited for these sessions. And I certainly think everyone got what they wanted out of this. So we will be sending the Excel sheet again to help complete the database of the committee personal and professional relationships with the elected officials. So be on the lookout for that. We will also share the PowerPoint Vicky covered with us today, along with a copy of the recording link to the session. So we'll be sending all of that out in the next couple hours or so. As far as the next meeting, be on the lookout. We will schedule the next nonprofit meeting within the next 3 or 4 weeks. And the agenda for that meeting, we will cover within the next weeks or so.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Barry. Just really looking forward to seeing everyone again. Thanks, Debbie, Eddie, Sherry, Danielle. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.